Hi, I'm Stuart Molina, Music Director of the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra. I'm very happy that we're off to a successful start to our return to the stage. It feels great to be playing for an audience again. We've started both our Masterworks and our pop seasons. Our next Masterworks concert is going to feature our principal bassoonist, Joey Grimmer, and so I thought it would be a great idea to have Joey on Conversations with the Maestro to talk a little bit about how he came to the bassoon and his relationship to this piece. Hey Joey, how are you doing?
Hey Stuart, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thanks so much for joining me today and agreeing to talk about your experiences. Is everything going well with you down in Maryland?
Everything's going great. Just a lot of teaching and playing and practicing and more of the usual.
Yeah, I look forward to talking about that because I think you probably wear more different hats than just about anybody in the orchestra. So it'll be interesting to hear. But we always start out talking about where you grew up, how you came to the bassoon and to music as a profession. So where are you from?
Well, that's a kind of complicated answer. I mean, it's not complicated, but it's long. So my family, my dad used to work in the oil business, so I grew up in Texas and then in Dubai in the Middle East, and then moved back to Houston after that, and that's where I spent elementary and middle school. And the Texas band programs, they try to get everybody to play instruments, and music is a big passion of my mother's, so she required all the kids to start piano at age 6. So I started piano in first grade.
Is she a musician herself?
She plays harp, and
cool.
She's a certified music practitioner, so she goes around different hospitals and homes throughout Colorado playing harp for people.
That's wonderful.
But that was kind of something that she picked up later in life. In her 40s, she started playing harp. And I'm the fourth of 5 kids. So she raised 5 kids. That was her first job. So her second career is as a musician. So 6th grade rolled around, and Texas band program. I got to go try out all the different instruments, and I narrowed it down to trombone, euphonium, and bassoon, which all have pretty much the same range.
Yep.
And
it's also kind of your speaking range, it says.
Yeah, exactly. And the bassoon won out because it looked the weirdest.
It certainly does.
And I still believe that. So 6th grade, I started playing the bassoon and started playing in youth orchestras. Houston was a great place to start playing because there was a lot of opportunities. In 7th grade, I started playing with the Greater Houston Youth Orchestra, and we actually had concerts at Rice University, which I ended up going to about a decade later for grad school, coincidentally. And the very first symphony I played was Sibelius's First Symphony in 8th
Which
grade.
we're doing next month for your concerto concert.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on playing the second half, but then I saw it was Sibelius's first, and I hadn't played it since then. So I figured it was time to revisit the work.
Oh, it's awesome. That's fabulous.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then before high school, my family moved to Colorado, and I spent the next 4 years there, and took as many playing opportunities around there as possible. Played in all the youth orchestras, did All-State, everything like that. And then college auditions came around, and my teacher, who was the professor at University of Colorado, he really recommended the professor at Cincinnati Conservatory, Bill Winstead, who's the principal in the Cincinnati Symphony.
He's kind of a legend, I think, in the pedagogical world of bassoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And he kind of came to his orchestral career a little later in life. He taught at West Virginia University and then down at Florida State, and only got the job at Cincinnati when I think he was 42 or 43.
Wow, that's rare.
It's very unusual. So I spent the next 4 years there and started taking orchestral auditions my junior year. Fell on my face several times, but each one was a great learning experience. And then was looking at looking around at different grad schools and, made a list of all the people that had won orchestral positions in the previous year and made my list from that. And then fortunately got into Rice. So returned.
And Rice, I take it, has a good track record of auditions.
Yes. Most people that go to Rice and Bassoon studio get playing jobs. So I thought, okay, this is a good path for me to be on. So it was kind of a homecoming of sorts to return to Houston, not as a child anymore. So seeing it as an adult, as a student, was a great change.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about Rice, because Rice has a reputation for being a graduate school that really focuses on orchestra. Is that actually the case there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a strong orchestra focus. Larry Radcliffe is the music director there, and he has a big influence on who the school hires, and he has experience with everybody, so he always seems to get the best faculty down there.
Yeah, I've heard recordings of that orchestra, and it sounds as good as any professional orchestra I've ever heard.
The first concert I played there was Mahler's First Symphony, and I think we had 18 rehearsals. So by the time the concert came around, it was note perfect. Everything was exquisite. It was like, this might not be totally realistic, but it's a good exercise.
How nice when you don't have to pay anybody.
Exactly.
That's really awesome. Okay, so you did your time at Rice, and you enjoyed being there, I take it?
Yes, I had a great time. I started doing some teaching in middle school and high school students, and continued to freelance in the area. I played a couple productions with Houston Grand Opera, and was still taking auditions, and got close several times, made the finals, runner-up, but nothing stuck. And then graduation rolled around, and said, okay, what next? So the week after graduation, there was an audition for the Naples Philharmonic in Florida, and it was a 1-year, possibly permanent, for assistant principal / second. It was primarily a second job. And I flew over to Naples and took the audition and got the position.
It's nice to get your first one, isn't it?
Well, that was audition number 16. So
my God! Wow.
I was ready, and that was a great experience. And the section, the woodwinds there were very supportive, and it was a very welcoming environment. And it was interesting moving to Southwest Florida at 23 when the median age there was 63.
Yeah.
So, I mostly hung out with people in the orchestra, and they were, ranging from 30s to 60s, and a lot of them had kids. So that was a big shift.
And it is an incredibly nice group of people down in Naples.
Yes,
they are
absolutely.
A welcoming orchestra, and a really fine orchestra. Did you enjoy the musical experience of playing down in Naples?
I did. I knew throughout my whole development as a player that I eventually wanted to get a principal position, but I was just happy for any work at the time. So
sure.
Playing second, it really helped me develop a good pitch foundation, and really helped me focus on response in the low register, which is one of the hardest things to do on the bassoon. And yeah, it was just wonderful.
And so then when you got your first principal job, did your experience as a second inform the way that you work with a second bassoonist, the way that you would explain things or expectations or anything along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a lot of experience with a lot of those second parts, and throughout this whole time, I played in the summer with the Colorado Music Festival. I was the assistant principal and second, so it was the same position. So there was a lot of second playing, and we got through a lot of rep in that orchestra, and it was nice playing there because my parents live about 20-25 minutes away from Chautauqua Auditorium, which is the hall there. So I would stay at home and then drive in for the rehearsals, and those are some long weeks. One of the weeks, I think I played 4 different programs, and one of it was a chamber music concert, and I had 18 services in 1 week.
Oh my God.
Which seems absurd now, because a normal orchestra is 7 or 8 services.
It's like, again, when you're young and then you're invincible and people can take advantage of you. Anything is possible.
It was a good learning experience.
I'll bet.
But Colorado was great too because I made some excellent friends and connections there, which helped down the road.
Sure.
So then, halfway through the year in Naples, the woman who was gone, she decided to come back. So, and I was at the same point of, okay, now what? And still taking auditions and getting close, but not snagging anything permanent yet. And my wife had just started her PhD in musicology at the University of Michigan. So I moved up to Michigan and started freelancing that fall after Naples, and contacted everybody that I knew throughout the country, and got a lot of work just in random places. And my friend in the orchestra, who is the bass trombone player in Jacksonville, he contacted me and he said, "Hey, we have an opening and we're thinking about splitting up the season between 3 different people. Would you be interested in a third of the season as principal?" I said, "Yes, sign me up." So I had the last third of the season filled up, and November came around that year, and there was an audition for the Houston Grand Opera, which I had experience playing with them in school. And this was for second bassoon. So I went and took the audition, and unfortunately I won that position. And still took more auditions in the meantime, and February rolled around, so I went down to Houston, played 2 productions there, 6 weeks, and then went straight to Jacksonville. And about a month after I got to Jacksonville, they had the audition for the permanent position, and fortunately I won it. So I thought, great, got that principal job, I'm set. And then about a month later, I opened the Union magazine and look at the auditions and see this Washington National Opera principal bassoon, and God, I don't even know this group. So I started looking into it and saw that they were doing a ring cycle the next year. I was like, okay, this is a serious job. I should consider it. And my wife's family, they take a beach vacation to Delaware every summer, and it was that same time. So I was like, well, I'll be in town anyway. I might as well just drive the 2 hours and take the audition. And my oldest sister, she lives outside of DC on the Virginia side, so I stayed with her. So I said, okay, it won't cost anything. It'll just cost 1 to 3 days of the beach vacation that I won't get back, but it'll be okay. And after 3 days, I won the position.
It's amazing.
So I felt like I was on a little bit of hot streak. 3 auditions in 1 year.
Well, so before you go on, let's talk a little bit about that, because you said that when you got the job in Naples, it was your 16th audition. So you've taken, 25, 30 auditions in your career. I assume this is fairly common. Does it get demoralizing after a while? Did you ever reach a point of like, it's not going to happen. I need to either, accept that I'm going to be playing second bassoon, which is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
Or, was there always the sense of like, this is where I'm heading and confidence going forward?
I kept progressing in them, and if I didn't advance in the first round, which happened maybe 40% of the time, those were the demoralizing ones, especially if I felt like I played really well. But sometimes I made the finals in some bigger positions, like Toronto Symphony. I was in the finals for the Chicago Symphony principal audition, and didn't have a job at the time. So I was like, okay, I think I'm doing something right, because people are giving me thumbs up so far. Maybe not the job, but there's some approval from committees. I gave myself more of a loose timeline of career options. I said, okay, I'll keep taking auditions until I'm 30, and we'll see from then. Yep. And maybe in the meantime, go back to school to get a DMA, to get a teaching position.
Sure.
Because I couldn't imagine doing anything else other than music.
Yeah, I get you. So the job at the Washington National Opera, it's kind of a unique job in and of itself, in that it isn't really just an opera job. It covers a lot of different kinds of repertoire. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the season is like there?
Yeah, of course. It definitely is. It's probably the most unique ICSOM orchestra. ICSOM is the full-time orchestras in the U.S. There are 4 opera ICSOM orchestras. There's the Metropolitan Opera, Washington National Opera, Chicago Lyric Opera, and San Francisco Opera. And this one is interesting because in addition to the opera work, we also have ballets that come through the Kennedy Center. So we generally have about 21, 22 weeks of opera in a season.
Wow.
And 7 weeks of ballet. And then there are musicals that come through the Kennedy Center as well, and we're the orchestra for that. I seldom play the musicals though. So
yeah, we've talked about that. No one uses bassoon anymore.
No one uses bassoon. Yeah, it's a shame. I did play The King and I 4 years ago and played 48 shows.
Wow.
That was a lot. But it was fun, and I used a different reed for every single show just to keep things interesting.
Oh, that sounds great. And the music is very beautiful.
Yeah, I had a great time. You know, you'd have your day completely free, and then you just go in for the show in the evening, and then there'd be 4 shows on the weekends, so those were a little busier. But the schedule wasn't too bad.
Okay, so you've got this job that keeps you busy for 20 to 28 weeks a year, right? So what possessed you to take more auditions at that point?
Well, I can't seem to stay still. So there are a couple people in my orchestra that are members or former members of the Harrisburg Symphony, and they always spoke highly of it. And the first time that I played in Harrisburg was as a substitute for the Nutcracker.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I remember.
Was
It's probably 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. And I thought, hey, it's a pretty good orchestra. And people were hanging out after the concert, going to the bar. It was just a good time. So I thought, yeah, this would be something fun to do. So the audition came around, I think in 2017, in the fall, and I took it and got runner-up. So close. But fortunately, it was available the next year, so I was fortunate enough to get the position.
That's right, because the woman that we hired moved up to Canada, right? Was it Toronto as well, or?
She was 2 hires ago, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, she went.
I'm losing my mind.
She went to Toronto, and now she's principal in the Milwaukee Symphony.
Wow.
And then Tom English.
Oh, that's right.
He won the audition, and then he won a position at the National Symphony.
That's right. He was with us for such a very brief amount of time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thrilled. I mean, I remember your last audition very, very well, and we were just thrilled that you were there, and happy, happy that your job at the Kennedy Center allows the kind of flexibility. And as you say, we've had experience with other players there, and the things that we have to do to make it work, and sometimes it's harder than others, but the payoff is great. And so are you enjoying? I know that I'm the wrong person to ask this question. Do you like playing in Harrisburg?
Yeah, I love going up there. It's a little less than 2 hours away, and we get put up in a hotel, and the schedule is pretty condensed, which is nice. Because a lot of the regional orchestras, they'll have rehearsal Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday is the show, Saturday's the show, and they don't put people up, so it's just a lot of driving. So it's really nice to just drive up on a Thursday afternoon, do the set of rehearsals, do the shows, and then come home Sunday. So it's better for, I think, a work-life balance.
Well, before we go to your first musical selection, you also have another job, and that's a fairly recent position as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about U of Maryland?
Yeah, so I started teaching at the University of Maryland in 2017. I think it was a year before I started playing in Harrisburg. And I always had this idea of having this kind of dual career as performer and teacher. And my teacher at Cincinnati, Bill Winstead, he was a great model of that. So he would play with the symphony, and then on Sunday, I can't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, and then on Monday he would teach all of his students, and he always had 10 students, and he always seemed to really enjoy it. And I think it's a really good combination because they both kind of feed off of each other, and I feel like when I'm doing one, it augments the other. And I started noticing, once I started teaching a lot more, I had to practice what I preached, and would also think, okay, why do I do this certain thing when I play? and how can I put this thing into words that other people can understand? And then sometimes you try to say those words to people and it doesn't click, so you have to come up with some other way. So it's every student is different, and like a little puzzle that you kind of have to figure out. You know, there's not one key that works with every person.
And how large a studio do you teach at Maryland?
There's about 12 students there.
Wow, that's pretty large.
So when I got there, the school was not doing well on the numbers side. I inherited about 2 students.
Wow.
So through a lot of recruiting and just putting myself out there, the first few years I went out and did a lot of master classes and tried to recruit that way. And in the summers, I teach at the Miami Music Festival, which I head down to Miami for about a week or 2, and that has that's paid off. And I have a current master's student who's in a fellowship program here, a Woodwind Quintet fellowship program that studied with me there.
Well, that's awesome.
So I'm just trying to, put feelers out for students. So if you know any bassoonists that want to come study.
Oh, absolutely. And Maryland has, it has a very good reputation for a good music program for several decades now, and it's exciting. So it sounds to me like you've got not just a full plate, but several full plates at once.
Yeah, and there's this kind of push and pull with which one is taking priority at the moment. I obviously can't stop teaching the students, but if I don't have an opera production going, I can maybe spend a little more time in the studio helping them out. And it was great having teaching as an outlet during the pandemic, because there were no productions going on.
That's right. Nice to have some kind of a steady stream of income as well. That's
absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, listen, let's take a little bit of a break. Do you want to introduce the first of the musical selections that we'll be hearing?
Sure. This first piece is a French piece that I performed in a recital. One of the nice things about teaching in Maryland is that I can give recitals again, and I have an outlet to do that. And people are kind of forced to go, which is that's nice. So I've been doing a series of more modern music, and this piece is from the 70s. It's by a French composer named Pierre-Max Dubois. It's from 1984, excuse me. And it's called Sonatine Tango. And it's got four movements, and it's kind of a tour de force of bassoon technique. But it also has some beautiful slow moments as well.
Fantastic. Well, let's hear that. Wow, you know I'm always amazed. Listen, I have a son that plays the bassoon, and for the first several years, I was at almost every lesson that he took. And we'll talk in a moment about the bassoon and what makes it so challenging. But seeing that kind of amazing technical prowess is inspiring. So congratulations just on that, let alone how amazing the performance was. So let's talk a little bit about the bassoon, because it's an instrument that not many people are familiar with. It's not like the clarinet where in any given high school you'll have 20 kids that play. You know, maybe one kid will play the bassoon. And most audience members, even at orchestral concerts, they look at it and it's like, wow, well, you know, I know kind of what it looks like, but what does it do? So you want to talk a little bit about the bassoon and how you make sound on the bassoon, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I love traveling through airports because the people scanning the instrument through the X-ray machine, I get a bunch of different guesses, and it's always fun. I get oboe a lot, and I get oboe even when it's not in a case through an X-ray machine. Bagpipes was a fun one.
Oh, nice.
Thank
God it's not a bagpipe.
I know. One person asked if it was a piano.
Interesting.
I don't know if they'd ever seen a piano before.
Betraying a tremendous ignorance of all things musical.
I know. But the answer is always fun. So it's a double reed instrument, which
what does that mean right away?
So double reed just refers to the type of mouthpiece or reed that we use, and it's made from a piece of a plant that's similar to bamboo called Arundinodonax, and it comes in a tube. And then we do a bunch of fancy steps with machines that I have over there in that desk, and we have to make all of our own reeds, just like oboists. And out comes this double reed. So it vibrates against itself, unlike a clarinet or a saxophone, which is a single reed instrument. And we spend a lot of time making reeds. Maybe not as much time as oboists, but we have to basically start from scratch every so often. And the reed goes on to the bocal, which is this metal piece right here. Mm-hmm. And then it goes into the instrument, which is about 4.5 feet tall, and it actually wraps around itself at the bottom. So it curves around in a little piece called the U-tube, which was named before the website. It's the original U-tube.
Oh, there you have it.
There you have it. So that's the U-tube. So it's basically an 8-foot long conical tube, which just means that it gets progressively bigger as we go through the instrument.
Like the clarinet.
Well, the clarinet is cylindrical.
Is it cylindrical? I thought it was a flare. Nope.
The flare is just for the bell, just for volume.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But the body is completely cylindrical. That surprised me too when I learned that.
There you go. Awesome. You learn something every day.
So the conical instruments have a bit of a warmer sound, and you see this. The smallest is the vocal opening here, and then the largest point is the bell here. So it gets quite a bit bigger as we go through, and as you can see, we have a lot of keys. So this right here is just for the left thumb. Mm-hmm. I have about 11 keys just for the thumb.
Wow.
And the bassoon, it didn't go through the type of development that the other woodwinds went through in the mid-1800s, the Bohm system, which simplified the key work, which would be a nice thing. They actually do have a couple Bohm bassoons out there, and I've seen them in instrument museums. It's very strange because the keys are all the holes are like in a row, and they seem to be in kind of random places in this.
Yep. And
the key work makes a lot more sense, but the problem is that it didn't sound like a bassoon anymore.
Yeah.
So it didn't have that kind of characteristic woody sound. And it's basically just been an evolution of just adding more and more keys. And there was it originally started off as the dulcian. It was a Renaissance instrument that was used as the base for both loud ensembles, which would be shawms, and for softer ensembles, which would be recorders. Mm-hmm. So it's always kind of had this this role of being able to wear many hats, as you put it earlier.
Sure.
And the role in the orchestra, we could be playing with the cellos, accompaniment lines, or coming out with a solo and the tenor register. You know, at the end of the second movement of Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony is a great example of that. So that's one of my favorite things is being able to have all these different roles. It'd be boring to play the melody all the time like the violins.
Yeah, my teacher always said that the most important woodwind instrument, and particularly in classical and early Romantic orchestras, is the bassoon, and particularly the second bassoon, because it's the foundation of all of the tuning for the entire woodwind section. Exactly. And thus really for the orchestra at large. And so it's cool. And you do, bassoon doesn't get big solos lots of the time, but when it does, it really is kind of a special timbre that I think takes the audience a little bit by surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is a German bassoon. This is made by Heckel. This particular instrument was made in 1956. I'm the third owner of it. The first owner, he ordered it when he was a sophomore at Cincinnati, studying there. The second owner, and then it ended up in a closet for about 18 years.
Wow.
And then he stopped playing and sold it to a woman who was a sophomore studying at Cincinnati. And then she stopped playing, and she sold it to me, who was a sophomore at Cincinnati.
Amazing. Now, one of the things about bassoons is they really do last very well, don't they? I mean, that they can last 100 years if they're well kept. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I know some people that play on instruments from the 19-teens, and you just have to get it serviced every year or two, and don't drop it too many times, and you'll be fine. So I think this will last me my whole career.
Well, and there are two things about bassoon ownership that a lot of people don't know. One is, first, that they're extremely expensive instruments. It's not like buying a flute or buying a trumpet. A bassoon is tens of thousands of dollars for a professional level instrument. But also, it's not like you can call Heckel and say, "I'd like an instrument," and next week you'll get one. They're all handcrafted, right?
Yes. So I think if you made that call, I would love to hear it. They'd probably laugh and hang up. The waiting list, it just keeps getting longer and longer. I remember when I was in middle school, I heard the waiting list was 4 years. I was like,
oh my God.
4 years, that is so long. And it just gets progressively longer and longer. The waiting list right now is 16 years.
Wow, to get a new Heckel.
To get a new Heckel.
Now, is there a benefit to get a new one instead of getting one that's tried and true? If in fact they last well, doesn't it make more sense to get one that you've heard played and or are they consistently fantastic instruments?
The ones that they're making now, I'd say, are pretty consistently fantastic. And there's that desire of some people to have it custom ordered because there are a lot of different options that you can have with the key work. Different trill keys that you can add. But I mean, you can make all these alterations to an older instrument. Like a couple of months after I got this one, I just sent it to the shop, and it sat there. It was worked on for about a month or two. It needed some sealing work, and I got a new key added. So I retrofitted another key that I'd never used before into a trill key.
Cool.
So because I have this key, I can do an A flat, B flat trill.
Oh boy!
If you don't have that key, you have to go like that. It's kind of a design flaw in the instrument. But I have that hole now, so I can do that trill. It was $800 well spent for a new key. And so this is Heckel started making bassoons thinking about the 1830s, 1840s. And there was kind of this juncture with the German bassoon and the French bassoon. And the German bassoon had a little bit more complicated key work and a bigger bore, which is the size of the opening on the inside, so it could play louder. The other one is the French bassoon, or the buffet bassoon.
The lamp bassoon.
So this is a French bassoon that I've turned into a lamp about a decade ago. And it used to play, not great, and I call this the lampoon.
That's very funny. I like that. Congratulations.
Always a good time to find some wordplay. The fingering, the key work is different. It's much more simple. So the right thumb on the German bassoon has 4 keys. This is the right thumb on the French bassoon. It has 1 hole and 1 key.
1 key.
But they primarily only play this now in France, Belgium, and I can't remember where else. But it's not, there aren't a lot of orchestras that use the French bassoon anymore.
Well, it's interesting when you hear orchestras from France. I mean, that is kind of the principal difference between the sound of a French orchestra and an American orchestra is the double reed instruments, because it's a school of playing that's just kind of totally different. And I actually prefer the German sound. That's certainly what I was trained and what you hear in most every American orchestra, right?
Yeah. About half of the orchestras in Paris are using German and half are using French. Which is interesting because the Paris Conservatory, they actually have 2 different teachers, one for the German fagot and then one for the French basson.
Wow, that's really interesting. So there are particular challenges to a bassoon, and the thing that I remember from Zev's lessons particularly is that for certain notes, to play them in tune, you have to cover part of a whole, and it's not even like half of a whole. It's like, well, no, this one's kind of 7/8 of the whole and this one 1/8 of the whole. How do you navigate these things, and how challenging is it to develop the motor memory to be able to play kind of the fast passages like you did in the thing we saw earlier?
It's immensely challenging. The finger in question is this first one right here. So like the other woodwind instruments, a lot of the fingerings and recorder, if some of the viewers played recorder in school, the fingerings are almost identical between 2 of the octaves. And you have to overblow to get this upper octave. And the way that we can do that on the bassoon is some of these keys over on the right side of the thumb, if you hold them open or flick it, it shoots it up to that upper octave. But that doesn't work for some of the notes. So we have to open up half of this hole right here. And it's actually a different size based on which note.
That's kind of insane.
So we have open F, which is no holes closed, and then F sharp, which is all the holes closed. Half step difference. Da da.
Wow.
You have to open this up about 1/4 of the way. And if it's too closed, then the instrument thinks, oh, maybe you want some of that lower octave. So it gives you a little bit of both, and it'll crack.
Oh my God. You'd think in all this development of new keys and things that someone would solve that particular problem.
There's a man who actually created a key a couple months ago. This is actually a very new development. I'm actually curious to try it out. But he's been advertising it online as a solution to the flicking problem of the bassoon.
It makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about this upcoming concert with the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra. What is the piece that you'll be playing, and what do you find special about it?
So the piece is called Pictures from the Floating World, and it's by David Ludwig. He wrote it in 2013 for Danny Matsukawa, who's the principal bassoon of the Philadelphia Orchestra. At the time, David was on faculty at Curtis, and he just got a new job as dean at Juilliard.
That's right.
And it's been performed a couple of times. I think this will actually be the 3rd performance in Pennsylvania. Nancy Gores in Pittsburgh Symphony, she played it.
Cool.
And I don't think there's a piano reduction of it yet, so it's just, if you've got an orchestra, you can play it, but not with just a piano. And it's a very unique piece. It's in about 5 kind of movements, 3 main movements and then 2 interlude movements. And the interludes are just bassoon and cellos, which is...
And just 2 solo cellos.
Just 2 solo cellos. And it's really interesting the way that it's structured. And it's a lot more free and kind of a dialogue between the instruments.
I really love those interludes, and I guess they're loosely based, or at least reminiscent of music by Debussy, particularly his preludes. And I just love the way that you have the full orchestra texture and the full width of timbre, and then he focuses on this very narrow kind of upper tenor timbre. And I think it's a very skillfully put together piece and very beautiful piece. When you and I were looking at concertos, it was a great experience for me hearing a whole bunch of bassoon concertos, because I don't get to listen to them all that often. But this one really jumped out at me, and I was really delighted that you liked it. Have you been enjoying working on it?
I have. It's different from your standard, showpiece, romantic era or classical era concerto, or even modern concerto, because it focuses a lot on the lyrical lines, and not just I can play a bunch of fast scales. Listen to me,
Yep.
I play the bassoon. I know how to play this instrument. So it really gives you a chance to kind of sing out, which is unique.
And there's an extended cadenza that he doesn't specify. How are you going about creating this complete solo section of this concerto?
Well, it's still in the works, so I've got some work to do. But I'm just going to take some material from throughout the different movements, and maybe even not parts from the bassoon part, maybe parts taken from the orchestra, and kind of weave them together into some sort of concise package that makes sense, and maybe write some transitionary material between the two.
Well, I'm certainly excited to hear what you come up with. Have you done a lot of concerto playing?
This will be my third performance ever.
You're kidding me. Wow, that's great. What were the other two concertos you did?
The first one was my freshman year of high school. I played the Hummel Bassoon Concerto with the youth orchestra in Colorado. Mm-hmm. I won the concerto competition. I beat out one other person.
All right.
Yeah.
I hope it was a flutist.
It was a cellist. And then at the International Double Reed Society conference in, I think it was either 2018 or 2019 in Tampa, I played an arrangement of the Carmen Fantasy.
Wow.
That my teacher Bill Winstead wrote for bassoon and piano. It was the Sarasate version. So
wow.
Then I converted the piano part back into an orchestra part.
I bet that was dazzlingly technical.
That was the look how fast I can play.
That's awesome. I conducted one of the Double Reed Society conventions years ago when it was at Ball State in Indiana.
There's something else.
It really was. It was a unique and great experience.
A lot of passionate double reed players out there, which the world needs.
Well, the one thing that I remember more than anything is every time they have these conventions, 1 hour they have the bassoon orchestra, and all the bassoonists at the convention gathered together and play. Like there were probably 60 or 70 bassoonists playing together, contras and bassoons, and I guess there are smaller versions of bassoons that someone was playing. I don't know, but it was a god awful sound. I have to have to say.
I've heard that, and you just walk the other direction.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra. Whenever I have members as guests for this series, I like to ask, what is it that makes us different from other orchestras? What is it that makes it special, and why have we been so successful at putting together such strong orchestras over the years, given a rather small market?
I think one of the best things that the symphony has going for it is its location. It has this really central location that it can pull people from the DC area, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, New York, and Peter comes from Phoenix, but
yeah. That's right.
Peter's a special case.
That's insane, but he does.
Yeah, and he loves coming out there. So there's this giant pool to pull from. It's not just people in the Northeast corridor. It's throughout the whole eastern half of the country, and so because of that, it attracts a lot of great people to come audition for it and come sub in it.
Yep.
And if I see that I have to hire somebody, I say, I can hire basically anybody I want within a 4-hour or more radius, and they'd be happy to come. And it's not a huge time commitment, like I mentioned earlier. Because a lot of the regional orchestras, they'll start rehearsing on Monday, and then it's just a lot of drive, and they have to have the rehearsals in the evening because most people have day jobs, and it's just very it's a compressed schedule, which it keeps things very fresh and it's exciting, and you kind of get immersed in the music. And then between those rehearsals, you're hanging out with the other players, which creates this real collegial environment. And we'll go to brunch Sunday after the Saturday concert, and go to Millworks, get brunch, and then go get dressed and go play the matinee, and then head home, and everybody's in a great mood.
Yeah, I've actually often compared it to like music camp.
Exactly.
Everyone leaves their homes, they go off to this place that's not home, they play beautiful music with great people, they hang out, they have beers, they party, they play, they party, they play. Then they go home to their real lives again, and they've just had this kind of like moment in Harrisburg. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's exactly how I view it. It feels just like summer music camp, but every month or so for 4 days.
Yep. Well, that's awesome. And before we finish, you have actually, I think, a fairly unique perspective as someone who's playing in at least 2 orchestras and also teaching at a very high level in the college and graduate levels. When you look to the future of classical music, or what we call classical music, how do you address these students of yours? The market seems to be getting smaller and smaller. Jobs are really hard to come by, and yet, we have to maintain faith in the viability of what we do and in the future. But how do you keep the kids optimistic and excited about the prospects of making a living in this, well, what's right now a very difficult profession?
Right, especially in the past year and a half.
Yeah.
I think you just have to be very flexible, and the analogy that I like to use is, you've got darts, just throw as many darts at the dartboard. Most of them won't stick, but you don't need all of them to stick, just a few of them. And if that is, having a successful chamber career or teaching career or orchestral career, if you're lucky enough to land one of the jobs, then great. I think there is room for everyone. You just have to be flexible.
And do you think that, we're still kind of hopefully in the last throes of pandemic time, but still certainly not entirely returned back to normal. Do you think that the reemergence is going to be quick or slow? Do you think there are strategies that we should be pursuing to make the transition back to normal as smooth as possible?
I think there's still going to be a focus on chamber music in the next few months or coming years, and that would be a good entryway into the bigger orchestral scene. It's hard to predict. Whenever I try to predict the future, I'm always wrong. When this all started happening in March, we were in the middle of double production of Don Giovanni and Samson and Delilah, and
wow.
We played a Don Giovanni, and everybody was like, "All right, see you in 2 weeks," and I was like, "Haha,
yeah.
I'll see you next month." And, yeah.
I'll see you in 18 months.
Exactly. So I think it was about 9 months until we all played together again for the first time, and not to an audience. We still haven't played for an audience. The first audience performance will be in about 2 weeks.
Oh, is that right? And what's that going to be? Is it ballet?
It's kind of a greatest hits of opera. It's a production called Come Home, and it's dedicated to Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, how wonderful.
A big supporter of the Washington National.
That's right. I mean, one of my favorite stories is that, she and Justice Scalia would go together to the opera. They were both opera lovers, and, maybe there is hope for humanity by just attending the opera. Brings the two most disparate sides together.
It's a place where they can't talk to each other for 3 or 4 hours.
That must be it. I like that theory. Well, listen, Joey, thank you so much for talking with me and with us today, and looking forward to your performance tremendously in mid-November. I think that's going to be very exciting, and your return to Sibelius 1. It's going to be a lovely program, and I can't wait to present you. So best of luck in the meantime, and I'll see you very soon.
Sounds great.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so much to Joey for joining us today on Conversations with the Maestro. I'm incredibly looking forward to his performance of David Ludwig's concerto. If you'd like to join us at the Scottish Rite Auditorium, the concerts are November 13th, Saturday night at 7:30, and November 14th, Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. The concert also features the first Sinfonietta by Max Weinberg and also Sibelius's beautiful romantic First Symphony. Please join us there and join us next month for more Conversations with the Maestro.